to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Yo, it's Ebro in the Morning. Shout to Laura Stiles and Young Baby Light. You know what I mean? They resting up. Laura will be back to the program.
And
by the
way,
holiday. Yes, Rosenberg.
Our guest today sent a beautiful gift to Laura Stiles. So thank you on her behalf.
That's right. We'll get right to it. We have Mayor DeBlasio, Bill DeBlasio, on the program. What's up, DeBlasio? How you doing, baby?
I'm hanging in, Ebro. No matter what, we're hanging in. How about you?
We are blessed in many ways, but, still a tough season for all, right? Like, all the way around, whether it's COVID, which is the big, scary beast outside, and then you got unemployment. You got the lines at the food pantries along, the lines to get tested along. And then this morning we wake up to news of former Mayor David Dinkins passing at 93 years old.
Yeah.
That's where you got your start, right, Mayor?
That's right, Rosenberg. I'm just feeling pain this morning. I know so many people in this city are. And Charlene and I, we heard late last night, and we're still trying to make sense of it because this is just someone who, for us, he was family. He was the person who got us started. I mean, I met Charlene because we both work for David Dinkins. And I wouldn't have this marriage, this woman I love, this family I love without him. I mean, so it couldn't be more personal. But, he also, for so many of us, he just showed us what it meant to serve other people and to do it with just tremendous humanity. I mean, this is just, I think people got a little bit of a sense of the human being, but I just want you to know it just a heart that shone through. I mean, he just wanted to help people. He really cared for all the people that he had brought along in his team. He was always looking out for the younger members of his team and encouraging them, helping them along, and just absolutely loved children, was totally devoted to children. And he did something about it too. He created these wonderful after-school programs, the Beacon programs, that, continue to this day. In fact, I thought it was my mission to carry on and build upon what he did. So we expanded those Beacon programs. We did a lot more after school, and things like pre-K were absolutely inspired by his commitment to children too. And so I miss him right now. I miss him a lot. And, but I know there's just so many people who were moved by him and made better by him that we're all going to continue on. We're all going to carry it on what he started.
So we had earlier on the radio, we brought and asked our colleague, and we call her Auntie Ann. Her name is Ann Tripp. She's been in covering the news on WBLS and on the radio here in New York City for a few decades now. And so she covered the news of when, David Dinkins was inaugurated as mayor, and now we're talking today. And I wanted to give context to what the first and only black mayor in a city with a large black population like New York City accomplished, but also point out the racism in New York City that he was confronted with, the way that he had to deal with the police who spewed a lot of racism at him, the city and what ultimately became the Giuliani era after him. And Dinkins didn't even get props for the work that he accomplished as a one-term mayor because he had so much opposition due to the fact primarily that he was black.
Well, black and proud to be black and willing to take chances to create more fairness and justice. Look, Ebro, if he was someone who didn't want to change anything, maybe that response would have been different. But he called out the racism that pervaded the city. And he did it in a very, honorable way. He was someone who really tried to work with everyone, tried to communicate with everyone, wasn't trying to create conflict, but was trying to create change. I think a lot of people saw the gentleman and they didn't necessarily understand the resolve and how much he was about addressing a status quo that just wasn't working. So he got tremendous opposition. You're right, the police unions were just horrifying the way they treated him. And so many others. But I'll tell you something, he kept going. And the thing to remember, you're absolutely right. The reason we are safe today in this city, and we've had a tough year, let's put that in clear perspective. But the reason that we went from the 80s and the 90s and such pervasive crime and all, David Dinkins achieved the plan to make the city safer. And it wasn't just about improving policing. It was about making sure kids had better options. Young people had those beacon programs. And he said it is both. You can't just focus on policing. You've got to focus on young people and uplifting young people. And he set that whole idea in motion. And it changed the city profoundly. But then to me, he kind of got airbrushed out of history very unfairly because it wouldn't have happened without him. And it's just not right. This is a guy who proved to this city that something could change. And he put us on this path. And I think we have to understand that the things that got better in New York City could not have happened without David Dinkins. Just couldn't have. We would have been stuck in a past that was unacceptable.
And that's what I was going to ask you is what was sort of the most unfair thing about the way Mayor Dinkins has been talked about in the years since he was mayor?
I think just a profound lack of recognition of how much the city had to address its contradiction and the fact that he did something about it. Because if he hadn't done something about it, the city wasn't going to work. I remember in those
and that contradiction wasn't just economic contradiction of being a melting pot. It was the race contradiction.
Correct. If you remember the times leading up to his election, I was on his first election campaign. This city was getting more and more overtly divided. There were acts of violence against people of color so constantly, so painfully. And just overt racist attacks had become way too common. And he was an answer. He said, we're not going to live this way in this city. We're going to find a way to actually come back together. He would talk about that gorgeous mosaic. And it's so important to understand that phrase. 2 words, but they said a lot. Gorgeous because he actually loved people. He believed in people. He believed in New Yorkers. Mosaic because he said, let each part of our community have its identity, its culture, its truth. You don't need to homogenize it. You can recognize it and it can all come together into something more beautiful. That's what he truly believed. And he personified that. So whereas Koch before him, unfortunately, often seemed tone deaf to communities of color, and didn't understand the pain and the need for change. And I don't even need to comment on what happened after. If not for David Dinkins, that division, that pain would have festered even more, and this city could not have moved forward. We did move forward. David Dinkins gave us the opportunity to move forward. And there's much more to do. And every one of us who worked with him is animated by his spirit today, and we need to carry on that mission. But I want you to know, had he not been there at that moment in history, this city we would have been stuck in a broken status quo that could not have allowed us to in any way come together and move forward. He actually proved something could change. He just proved it by his very being. And he did it with heart and decency, which is the other thing to remember, that he showed people a path forward. Remember, he brought Nelson Mandela to New York City. This is really important parallel. He brought Nelson Mandela to New York City, which was crucial in establishing Mandela's international presence and legitimacy as the next president of South Africa. He helped very consciously to set the stage for not just the destruction of apartheid, but for Mandela to be seen in advance as a head of state. And it was a very moving time for all of us in the administration. But remember that, like Mandela, Dinkins believed we could find a resolution to our problems and find a way to have a multicultural society that worked. And he modeled it, just like Mandela did. He modeled it by his very being.
So if Dinkins was the man that is the man that you speak of, and then we have this Giuliani era who tries to take credit for the momentum that Dinkins began, but also in many ways took the city backwards.
Sounds eerily familiar.
And then Bloomberg comes along in a very corporatized, elitist kind of way. Did great things monetarily speaking, I think some people would say, but also created a large economic divide, Bloomberg. I'd have to assume that looking back at history, New York City just went through what America went through almost at the same time. Just, maybe 10 years staggered, where you had Obama after Bush, and then you had Trump, and now we have Biden. And it's almost parallel for my brain. It almost lines up too perfectly and poetically, because now you have Giuliani, who's basically the spokesperson for Trump.
Mm.
And now we have Biden, who we like Biden. We like Biden, but we don't assume that Biden is going to be progressive. We don't see Biden, in the same way that we may have seen other candidates that were running at the time. Talk to us about how you see this Biden-Harris win, and in relation to almost to New York City, because we're all going through a tough time right now and going to have to navigate out of it.
Well, Ebro, first of all, as usual, I really mean this, a really powerful analysis from you, and I appreciate it. And I think one of the things to emphasize in that analysis is remember the hell that President Obama was put through. The amazing thing was people started to understand and appreciate Obamacare once Trump started attacking it and trying to tear it down. Then suddenly it became popular in the polling. But remember, Obama was trying to do so many things to move this country forward, and he was constantly attacked. And we can't forget that piece either, how unfairly he was treated despite doing so many good things. So I do have hope for this new administration. I think Joe Biden truly feels something for everyday people, for working people. It truly does. And this is important to recognize. There are leaders, as you said, some who are kind of elitist by their nature. That's not Joe Biden. He is grounded. He understands that a whole coalition came together to bring him into office. He doesn't think that just one part of the community brought him there. He knows he never would have gotten there without Black Latino votes. He also understands the importance of reaching out and bringing white working class people back into the Democratic coalition. He feels that. So I am actually very hopeful that he is going to do some big and progressive things, starting with a stimulus. It's interesting. He's talked about Franklin Delano Roosevelt and that moment in history. I think he's animated by that. That gives me a lot of hope. But don't for a minute think, because I see your parallel, but that doesn't mean Joe Biden's going to be given an easy time. Those attacks are going to begin on him on January 21st, and we'll go on the same track again. But I think the important thing as we reflect on Mayor Dinkins again is to understand the eternal nature of what people do who are leaders who want to make change, that the change never goes away. What Mayor Dinkins did couldn't be erased. It just couldn't be erased. Once he got there and proved that there could be a different kind of leadership, everything changed. And that's why I say he put us on a better path. That can't be taken away.
Well, sorry, Rosenberg, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you're talking about leadership, and this is a tough question. I tried to bring this up with Governor Cuomo last week a bit. I'm going to bring it up with you. Do you think that at this moment in time, there could be a major statement made by seeing you and Governor Cuomo truly get on the same page? Because it does seem like over time, your guys' constant infighting for whoever's fault it is has not been helpful to where we are as a city and state. Is there a way you guys could truly come together in a way that shows unity and help set a tone for the city and the state?
Look, Rosenberg, it's a fair question. I would just say, of course, if that's something that's important, just to show it, we can do better at that. And I'm ready to do it, and I'm sure, I really believe he is too. I keep telling people on so many levels, he and I have actually agreed, and that's why New York City and New York State have stayed safer than most of the rest of the country, because we've actually had the same basic vision of addressing the coronavirus head on and being really data-driven, science-driven, cautious, careful. Like, that's been the state approach, that's been the city approach. Where we disagreed, it was not as important as where we agreed. But I do hear your point. I'm ready to do that, and I want to be fair. I've talked to the governor a lot of times. We have conversations that are productive. We know we have a lot of common ground on the approach to COVID. So if what we got to do is show it more, then that's on both of us to make that come alive.
Ebro, get it done. Let's get them both on the show at the same
let's
time.
do it. That's what we do, baby.
I'll be the Hot 97 Summit.
I love it.
Yo, are you saying you're in? If we make the call,
I'll be there.
On the schedule,
I will be there.
So we have
All
a
right.
commitment from you.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so consider it done. Griff put the ask into Cuomo's office. We're gonna have DeBlasio and Cuomo on for a big kumbaya.
That would be perfect for Thanksgiving, too. Beautiful.
I mean, even for whatever. Even if everybody need a break and we come back top of December, whenever. We don't want to rush them. We got, these guys, we got to iron their shirts right and, figure out whose background is going to be nicer and, the whole competitive. What is the thing? Is it just a New York City versus the rest of New York State balance thing? Like, what is the mayor of New York City and the governor of New York State thing? Because it is always a thing. It's not just you guys. It's always a thing, and I actually think it's overblown. Because mayors and governors, people don't agree. That's just part of doing business. But I think it's overblown. Tell us what it really is.
Well, again, Ebro, you know your history. There's no city like New York City, and it makes sense that we have things we have to look out for our own people here, and every mayor has to do that, and the governor does have to think about the whole state and balance that equation. I really, truly, I've had this conversation with Governor Cuomo, really respectfully. I know he has to think about a lot of different things than what I have to think about, but my job is to defend and protect my people, and that can lead to different conclusions. It's not shocking. It's like if you have said to people, it's like if you think, do you think the federal government always agrees with every state or every city? No, there is a natural difference. What we all have to do is say, okay, that's going to be part of the reality. How do we best communicate through that? And there's been many times, in times of crisis, or even just on everyday issues where he and I have agreed and we've been very public about it. But that doesn't get as much attention as when there may be a disagreement. But Ebro, you're totally right. It's been true of pretty much every governor and mayor. That's not to say just, leave it be. Let's keep working on it. Let's keep communicating. And let's show people that we do have a lot of common ground. But I also would say when we have common ground, I would ask everyone who does the analysis and the reporting to actually acknowledge that.
Oh, that's boring stuff. That doesn't get clicks, DeBlasio. Come on, that doesn't sell.
I went crazy, bro. I went crazy. But seriously, New York State and New York City overwhelmingly have agreed on the most important thing, to be science and data driven, to be cautious and conservative in fighting the COVID, to be really careful. And a lot of other states, sadly, were not careful, and we see what's happened to those states. So I give the governor credit and the state of New York, and we have absolutely been in a real alliance in terms of let's stay ahead of this disease, not play from behind.
All right, so
there's been a lot of criticism.
A limited time with you today. I'm sorry, Rosemary, go ahead.
I'm sure you're going to go in the same direction. The biggest conversation right now is schools, Mayor. There's been a lot of criticism. You came into office with schools and education being your number one focus, and people have been upset about what they see as inconsistency. You started out saying you absolutely wanted to keep the schools open, and now we have the set rule of if there's a 3% rate, you close the schools, and that's where we stand now. So, number one, is there validity to the criticism that you have been inconsistent? Do you have any regrets? And what can you say to parents that are freaking out about the state schools right now?
Most important thing, Rosenberg, is we're going to open our schools again. It's going to take more work. I talked about it in detail yesterday, but we will open our schools again. I feel consistent, actually. I said when a whole lot of people were saying this summer, don't open the schools, it can't be done, it won't be safe. I said we are going to open and we're going to make it safe, and we did. And for 2 months, we were able to reach hundreds of thousands of kids. But I also said if we went above 3%, that meant we were having a bigger problem, and we were going to close at that point and reset the equation. We did that. We kept to that rule. I know it doesn't feel good. Do I feel happy that we got to 3%? No, not at all. I really hoped we could avoid it before this crisis was over, but we're all affected by this second wave, much worse in the rest of the country than here. We will reopen our schools. There's going to be a lot more testing. Parents are going to have to be really involved to help us get it done, but we will reopen our schools. And I truly believe every month is going to be better than the previous month. That when we get into December, we're going to start working to reopen our schools. I think January, we get past the holidays, it's going to start to be better. February is going to start to be better. The impact of vaccine will be felt more with each passing month. But we are bringing back our schools. It's just going to take more precautions, more stringent standards than even we had before, because we have a second wave bearing down on us.
Now, DeBlasio, obviously when you're the leader, everybody likes to point out the mistakes you make, right? You said everybody's going to have an iPad and everybody's going to be taken care of with technology. We keep hearing reports that everybody doesn't have what they need at doing the virtual schools. How are we fixing this? What's really going on with the disbursement of iPads and et cetera, and getting kids Wi-Fi? What needs to happen here?
So, Ebro, I think you can have two truths at once. It is true that we still have to reach more kids because iPads have broken in some cases, because more kids are asking for them. Or the service isn't working. We have to switch the service. You can keep the same device, but switch the service. These are legitimate problems. But that doesn't negate the fact that over 350,000 kids got free iPads, free service. One of the biggest things ever been done to close the digital divide. So I'm never going to say we're done until every single child has what they need. But I don't want to take away from everyone in the Department of Education who moved heaven and earth. That is a third of a million children. 350,000 kids got that service, and they got it in the middle of a pandemic. Any child in New York City public schools who either doesn't have a device, or it's not working, or they're having a problem with the service, just call 311. If it's a service problem, we can fix it very quickly. We can switch providers, whatever it takes. If you need a new iPad, we have a bunch on order, but so does the rest of the world. So they're coming in waves, and then we turn them around quickly and get directly to the door of each family. And I think that's powerful.
Tablets are hard to come by too, especially when you're buying in bulk. I'll give you that because I work with Apple, so I know. But what is this? And I know parents are, look, man, they want it to be perfect. And I know on our show we've reiterated to the audience time and time again that mistakes are going to be made by the government, by our leaders. This is something we've never been through before. There's going to be problems. We're going to all try to work through this together and be together. How are you dealing with addressing and calming? Because I do believe that, people want to hear our leadership. And we talked to Cuomo about this too. We're all in this together. Mistakes are going to be made. Yep. But the answers can't always be political answers when we're afraid. We need human answers. We need to see you guys say, hey, man, we thought it was going to be X. We screwed that up. It's okay. Like, everybody's okay hearing, we screwed that up. Now pivot. Because people get confused when there isn't confirmation of a botch, of the F up. Like, if you ever notice, people will go, well, you said X and now it's Y. And nobody ever says, no, when we said X, we screwed that up. Now it's Y. Does that make sense of what I'm saying? And I feel like sometimes you could be a little bit more. I'm asking you to be a little bit more deliberate when the pivot takes place.
Yeah, Ebro, it's a very good point. And I think, but one of the things that's interesting, a lot of times journalists will say, do you apologize for this? Do you apologize for that? And one of the things I say is I try to apologize when I think I was just plain wrong, as opposed to when something that we did was difficult and people don't necessarily love it, but it was the right thing to do, or we made the best decision we could at the time. When we set that 3% for schools, that was based on the information we had in August. We did not know for sure what it would be like to run the biggest school system in the country in the middle of COVID. Turned out we had tremendous, real success. Everyone worked so hard to keep schools safe. And then people say, well, okay, so you didn't realize it would be that good and you should have set the bar differently. And part of me says, that's really fair. And some of me says, did we make the mistake with that number? And then another part of me looks at this growing reality around us where the cases just keep going up every day. And I'm like, I'm not sure. At times I was kicking myself. I said, the 3%, was that too low? Should we have done it a different way? And then as I see each day's report of more and more cases, I say to myself, well, maybe that wasn't too conservative.
Right.
So I want to be honest with you about the difference between I screwed something up versus I'm not sure or things changed. But I think you're right. If people benefit from even just hearing you like we're doing right now, just talk about it and not necessarily be defenses up or smooth, but sort of maybe a little more raw about why things are the way. I mean, there's a question yesterday morning, totally different topic about specialized high schools. And the question from a journalist, very heartfelt, said a lot of Asian parents felt offended when I tried to change specialized high school admissions. And I said, I have come to realize that I sent the wrong message to those parents, and I apologize for that, because a lot of immigrants, hardworking people struggling to get their kid an education, and they thought I was trying to take something away from them, which is not what I wanted to do. But I also said yesterday, I meant it. I don't want to take away from them. We have to come up with a solution that's fair to those hardworking families, but we cannot have Stuyvesant High School be 3% Black and Latino combined. Like, that status quo is broken.
Right.
So I've got to be honest I think I was right in what was motivating me, but I think I was wrong because I left a lot of people feeling hurt that I didn't want to hurt and I didn't mean to hurt, but I didn't understand it. I didn't speak to it properly at the time, and I won't make that mistake again. I think you're right. We got to sort of reveal some of what's going on inside us on these issues.
Well, and there's also this, right? Because there's the political answer, and then there's the managerial answer, and then there's the human answer, right? Because you're a manager. You manage a staff, you manage a city, you're managing a business, which is New York City. You're also a politician, right? And then you're also a human being and a father and a husband, right? And so sometimes those answers don't always, the answer doesn't always fit in nice and neatly in those boxes, right? And you know, during this time, I think it's been a realization for all of us, because every answer during COVID-19 sucks. Yeah, you know
That's
what I mean?
a quote, Ebro. That's a quote. I'm gonna put that.
Every plan sucks.
I'm gonna put that quote behind me at my press conferences.
No, seriously. Sometimes you need to walk up there and you need to go, listen, guys. Every plan we have sucks, and we're gonna pick one that keeps the least amount of people from dying, man. That's the answer.
You're giving me my new theme.
You know, because honestly, there's sometimes I listen to you, I listen to Cuomo, and it's like, wow, you guys should have just came up to the mic and said, listen, you're not going to like none of these answers today, but this is the information we have. And, you know, and let's get into it. We always love you for coming on the program. And when you're out of office, when it's time to vote next summer, what do you want people to remember about DeBlasio, man?
What are you throwing me out early? I get all next year.
He's got a long
I have
time.
all of 2021.
I mean, listen, I just want to make sure we start. I want to start banging the drum now, because I want to make sure you get credit for the good stuff you have, because they're going to come for you, man. Like I've been warning you all these years, man. I keep saying they come for you, and they keep coming for you.
Well, you're a wise man. Look, I don't want to focus on that. I got a lot to do right now, but I do want to say, I just hope that, you know, what we're doing will be remembered for the same humanity that we saw from David Dinkins. You know, what I'm doing, what my team is doing. It is truly, David Dinkins was motivated by love. We have to really understand this. He was motivated by love. He did care for his fellow human being, and he wanted to do something to ease people's suffering and help people move forward and ease the division. And he really devoted himself. He took so many slings and arrows, but he really thought he had a role to play in history, and it wasn't going to be fun. By the way, when you said like everything sucks, a lot of times, and I saw it up close and personal, a lot of times that job was not easy for him, and it would have been a lot easier for him to just have taken a pass. But he ran for mayor because he thought he had a duty. You know, he was someone who really had a sense of purpose. So look, I only want to say, I just hope that when my time comes, people see some of that same humanity and that devotion to people, because that's what I'm about, and that's what my incredible team of people around me is about. They have just not even slept since the beginning of this crisis, and they just keep going because they care. And I hope even when anything sucks, I hope people can feel there's a lot of decent people trying to protect people out there.
Well, Mayor, listen, we know you don't always get the easiest rap from a lot of people, and I understand there are people who feel strongly about it, but we always appreciate your candor with us and speaking on this station to our community that listens to Hot 97. We appreciate it, and please tell the First Lady we also extend our condolences about Mayor Dinkins.
Thank you, Rosenberg. I will, and thank you guys because you always you have the conversation here that the whole city needs to be a part of because it is positive and purposeful, and I really appreciate you guys. And please give my best to Laura as well.
Yeah, thanks for the baby gift too. That's
You know,
what she said.
well,
She said thanks for the gift.
Yeah, but you guys do something special for the city. I want to thank you. So it's Thanksgiving. I'm going to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone who follows this show, and happy Thanksgiving to all of you. And I am thankful for you guys. I truly am.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And everyone else, the mayor also said to let you guys know, don't be an ass, wear a mask, and keep it low. He couldn't say it. I said it for him.
That was a beautiful sentiment.
Thanks, Mayor.
Take care.
Take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.